ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala ma ba'd. Today is our final Q&A before the blessed month of Ramadan. We're going to be doing this Q&A and then pausing this series until after Ramadan. And so today's Q&A will be entirely dedicated to various issues pertaining to the month of Ramadan. And we're going to dive straight in. So the first question that I have is, Shaykh, can you please, in a brief summary, explain between the controversies of moon sighting that comes every single year? So this is the issue of course, moon sighting. Now, I'm going to answer this question briefly, and please be aware that I've given a much longer lecture on this online. And I will answer this question firstly by saying that let us talk about this from a perspective of classical Islam, early fiqh, and then let's see what we can do in modernity, second point. And then third point, let's conclude with the practical position that we should all follow. So first is traditional fiqh, second is modern, and then third is what we're all going to actually end up doing. So as for classical fiqh, there are two primary positions, and you've all heard of these positions. There's called the global versus the local moon sighting. And of course, this is a simplistic way of phrasing it. In reality, the ummah was never, ever united on the global moon sighting. This is a theoretical position, because I ask you to think about the Muslims of Andalus versus the Muslims of Hijaz, Arabia, versus the Muslims of Iraq, versus the Muslims of China, because there are Muslims in the East Turkestan province. Do you really think ever in history that all of those Muslims celebrated and began Ramadan and ended Ramadan at the same time? It is actually impossible for this to happen pre-modernity. It is only the advent of the telegraph and the telephone and the internet that we can even conceptually think about this. So realistically, it wasn't global versus local. This never happened. Realistically, it was, okay, if we hear the news that a neighboring province has started Ramadan just in time, and we did not see the moon, but a neighboring province, if a crier came within that 12-hour span or 5 hours, whenever they came, and within that time we heard before the Adhan of Fajr that the neighboring province or the neighboring city saw it, should we follow it or not? And this is the controversy that is found in early Islam. And there are some ulama that said, yes, let's follow as far as the news spreads. There are others who said, let us follow every single region or locality, or what is called matla', which is basically the hemispheres or the latitudes that the sun is going to rise in. So let's follow everybody within that same. And then others said, no, we follow the people of our own locality. And generally speaking, for the bulk of Islamic history, before the advent of the telegraph and the telephone, people would follow that which was within a reasonable distance, and that's about it. And that's really the way that the ummah has proceeded. In fact, if you look at one of the earliest incidents that we have about a controversy in sighting, this is a hadith found in Sahih Muslim. It's a very interesting hadith, and it's technically it's not a hadith because the Prophet is not directly mentioned, but it involves some of the Sahaba. It involves Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, who was the governor of Syria, and it involves Ibn Abbas, who was in Mecca. And Ibn Abbas, his freed servant, his Mawla Qurayb, went to Bilad al-Sham, went to Damascus in the month of Ramadan. And he was in Damascus when the moon was sighted. And he then left Damascus and he came back to Medina or Mecca or the Hijaz. He came back to the Hijaz, and it takes around 3 weeks. So by the time he got back, they are still in Ramadan. So notice it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the news to reach from Damascus to Hijaz. What do you think of Andalus? What do you think of China? It's not going to happen. In any case, he comes back to Hijaz. He meets Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas asks him, when did you guys see the moon? And Qurayb says, we saw the moon on the night of Friday. So we began fasting the next day. Ibn Abbas said, well, as for us, we saw the moon on the night of Saturday. And so we are going to keep fasting based upon what we saw. So Qurayb said, isn't the citing of Muawiyah good enough for you? And Ibn Abbas said, no, this is how the Prophet ﷺ taught us. In other words, this is Ibn Abbas's interpretation, that the Prophet ﷺ is telling us we follow what we have seen. So from a purely theoretical perspective, I would like to state that the position that has been the default historically, and the one that I personally subscribe to from a theoretical perspective, from a classical perspective, is that every locality, every region should follow its own citing. So if we're possible within one land, if you like, or one country, which is basically one group of people, they should follow their own citing. Now, this is from a purely theoretical perspective. What a lot of people don't really take into account in this regard, and I've given a longer lecture, I ask you to listen to that lecture, which was given actually last year, only a year ago, is that in fact, one needs to also take into account our extenuating circumstances. And the issue of extenuating circumstances is something that is well known even in the great ulama of Islam. The great scholar, the Shafi'i scholar, Taqiyuddin al-Subki, he says that if the mufti wants to take a position that is not as strong as another one for the sake of a religious benefit, then it is permissible to do so. And Ibn Rajab also has this statement as well in this regard, that it is permissible for the one who's doing ijtihad to go to a weaker position if the stronger position from a textual perspective is going to cause greater chaos or greater evil. And Ibn Taymiyyah also has many positions in this regard, and many ulama. This is a well-known principle. And I have explained in my longer lecture the fact that the whole issue of calculations has really been taken to an emotional backlash, that people have they've just become bitter at the notion of calculations, and they just don't even want to listen to it anymore. And this goes back, in my humble estimation, to how the whole controversy was introduced back in the late 90s when I was also a student in Medina. I remember this very clearly, that when this happened, it really did cause a huge backlash, and I think we are still, at least those who were alive back then, they're still, I mean by that, those that are above the age of 30 or 40, meaning we were alive back then, we were cognizant. As for the next generation, as for those who are in their 20s or even late 20s, those of the next generation coming, my prediction is, and mark my words and listen to me carefully, and mark this and remember the date, the year is 2020, this is in the COVID crisis. I'm saying this clearly, whether you or I like it or not, whether we want it or not, within a decade, not a generation, within a decade, the vast majority of masajid in this country, in America, and even maybe in the Western world, will be following the position of calculations. And my opinion now is that it's not a problem at all. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was very much against the position of calculations, but I am following now Ibn Taymiyyah and As-Subki and many great ulama who said that in extenuating circumstances, we go to a position that is not as strong. It is a weaker position, and we leave a stronger position because there is a greater good that will come to the community. And anybody who has witnessed the moon fighting wars over the last 15, 20, 30 years, and anybody who understands that the next generation's Islam and their coming to Eid will be dependent on whether they know when Eid is or not, they will understand that there is a huge benefit, a massive benefit in our children, in our societies, in our school districts, in our workplaces, in our bookings of the halls. The list goes on, that we know when it is going to happen, and it is not a position that is a progressive opinion. Rather, we find it in Muttarif ibn Abdullah ibn Shaykh, one of the great tabi'un. We find this in Rashid the greatest alim of the last century. We find this in the Shaykh al-Azhar, Mufti al-Maraghi, who died 1945. We find it in the great scholar of hadith, Ahmad Shakir, who died 1958. Ali Tantawi, Mustafa Zarqa, Yusuf al-Qardawi, Shaykh Ali Qurradaghi, Shaykh Hassan al-Shafi'i, Shaykh Abdullah al-Judai', Shaykh Faisal al-Mawlawi, and it goes on and on. And of course, as we are all aware, the fatwa of calculations was given by the European Council of Fatwa in 2007, the Fiqh Council of North America, which I'm a part of. It was given before I was a part of it, but now I'm a part of it, and I agree and endorse this fatwa, and more scholars. And informally speaking, anecdotally speaking, I have been talking about this issue for the last 10 years amongst ulama and students of knowledge and imams across this country. And I would estimate from my own conversations that over 80% of the people that I have spoken to, the imams and the du'ats and the scholars, they are sympathetic to and they want to do the position of calculations, but they're worried about the backlash of their communities. And they say that, oh, the board is going to get angry or the people are going to get irritated. But more and more of the students of knowledge and ulama are understanding that Islam is not that strict in this regard. Now, all of this is abstract and theoretical. If you are in charge of your masjid, if you are the shaykh that everybody's going to get fatwa from, then you have the right to endorse the position. All of this, put it aside. What will you do and what will I do? You and I, we will follow our local masjid and community regardless of what their position is. Why? Because it is not my right, it is not your right to go against your own community when it is a gray area. It is not haram and halal, it is not shirk and kufr versus bid'ah and iman versus, no, it is a gray area. It is a position that people have been debating since the beginning of Islam. And you are not authorized to go against your own group, your own people. That's breaking the unity of the Muslims in your own region. So if your masjid that you continuously go to, the group of people that you associate with, if they follow calculations, follow them. If they follow local, follow them. If they follow global, follow them. Stick with the jama'ah as much as you can, and Allah Azza wa Jal will bless you in that. The Prophet ﷺ said, hadith is in Tirmidhi, and this hadith is really, really profound, that he said, "As-sawmu yawma tasumun wal-fitru yawma tuftirun." As-sawmu yawma tasumun. The day of fasting begins the day that you're all fasting, and the fitr is the day that you do the fitr. Now, at first glance, this hadith seems bizarre. What does that mean, as-sawmu yawma tasumun? Imam at-Tirmidhi, the one who reported the hadith, he comments, he explains, and he says, and I quote from Sahih Tirmidhi, he says, "This has been interpreted to mean that one fasts and celebrates the Eid with the group of Muslims and their majority." And the scholar of Hadith al-San'ani from Yemen, he writes in his Subul al-Salam, this hadith proves that what counts for Eid is that the people agree to the fact that it is Eid. And so, if a single person sees the moon, but it is not followed by his community, he will follow his community and ignore what he himself has seen. In other words, when our Prophet ﷺ is saying, the day of fast is the day when all of you fast. What he is saying is, who cares what happens up there? Down here, when your community begins, you stick with them. When your community breaks, you break with them. Do not break away from your own community. I want to be as explicit as possible. Listen to me carefully. You just heard my opinion right here, and that is that I endorse calculations, and I believe that calculations are the way to go for the future of Islam in this country, and I believe that is going to help preserve Islam, because the fact of the matter is a good percentage of Muslims who live in this land, the only time their spouses and their children even come to pray is on the day of Eid. We see people on Eid, we don't even see any Friday of the month. A good percentage of people will not even pray Eid if they are not able to take off, if the days are 2 days and he's an engineer, doctor, he's a pilot, whatever, our kids' school, etc. They're not able to take off 2 days. They only take off 1 day. If it's not the day they thought, they're not going to come. Besides that, that's my position. Now, that has been my position for over a decade. In my previous community of Memphis, they never followed this position despite the fact that they wanted to. Why? Because we had one masjid and the other masajid in the community did not want to follow it. So I said to them, we will not break away our masjid from the other masajid, even though my masjid was willing to break away. They were willing to follow me. I said, no, we're going to stick with the other masajid because yadullahi ala al-jama'ah, because Allah's barakah and Allah's hand comes when we all combine together. So for 10 years in that community, we never followed followed calculations, even though that was my opinion. Now I have moved to this great city of Dallas, and now we're finding the masjid that I'm with, and most of the masajid here are not following calculations. I will not follow calculations in my personal life. Why? Because I'm following the community. But I will continue to push, and I will continue to argue for. And the day that the community changes, the day that our masjid or the majority of masjids change, that is the day that I will follow. Until then, even though I believe that it is the better position, in my own life I will not follow it, because we should be together as a community. We follow the community because Allah's blessings come when we follow the community. If you want to bring about change, change comes from within. It is not superimposed from without. So, the answer of our first question after all of that long journey, and I've given a longer lecture online, just find it online. I forgot the title, but it's basically called, I believe it's called Ending the Moon Fighting Wars or something like this. So you can find it up online on YouTube. To conclude all of this, all of that is theoretical. What will you do in your personal life, dear Muslim? The masjid that you associate with, follow them. The community you consider yourself a part of, follow them. And leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is our first question. The second question that we have here, a brother asks that how do we calculate the timing for Fajr, and can we follow these charts that our masjid prints, and what if two masjids of the same city have different charts? How do I understand this difference? So the issue comes over the early timing or the beginning timing of Salat al-Fajr. And again, in a nutshell, all of these questions can be given in long detail, but we don't have time. In a nutshell, from the Quran and Sunnah, we learn that Fajr, there are two types of Fajr. They are what is called the false Fajr and what is called the true Fajr. Al-Fajr al-Kadhib wal-Fajr al-Sadiq. Now, what is Al-Fajr al-Kadhib? So imagine yourself sitting in the desert in the middle of the night, and imagine the sun is slowly going to be rising from the horizon, okay? So as the sun is coming closer to the horizon, or as the earth is rotating so that the sun is appearing to be closer to the horizon, the first thing that you will see a slither of light come out straight from the middle of the horizon. You're going to see just the very first pinnacle, just like a vertical column of light. That will be if it was pitch black. There was no light that's going to disturb you, no atmospheric problems, there's no clouds. Just imagine you're in the middle of the desert on the moonless night, no moon, we don't want any light. And you're sitting there at 3 a.m. I don't know what you'd be doing at 3 a.m. in the desert, but just imagine you are. What would you see? You would see a slither of light come. Slowly this slither would expand, right? Until finally it's going to be straight in the horizon. That is called Al-Fajr al-Sadiq. That is called the real time of the Fajr, the true dawn that we're waiting for. We are not waiting for the early dawn, or it's called the zodiac dawn. We're not waiting for that dawn. That dawn is the false dawn. We're waiting for the real dawn, when the entire horizon has a slither of light. And it's going to be horizontal. It will not be vertical. That's the key here. So the real Fajr is the horizontal one. And the fake Fajr begins as a vertical, and then slowly it's going to go until it is horizontal. Allah says in the Quran, فَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Go ahead and eat and drink until you can distinguish the white thread from the black thread. And the hadith explains what this means is the horizontal rays of light, that white and black, you can clearly see them. So, when the real Fajr comes in, that is when we begin our fast, and that is when Salat al-Fajr can be prayed. At the adhan of Fajr, that is when we start our fast. Our iftar should be before that point in time, our suhoor should be before that point in time. And then when the adhan comes, and obviously if we are late for whatever reason, and we hear the adhan with the waters in our hands, we know the hadith of the Prophet who said that if the adhan is called and you have a glass of water in your hand, then finish the glass of water. So it's not like literally when you hear the adhan, but we should try to give some minutes before us and the adhan. So that adhanul fajr is the actual timing when we call what is called imsak starts. Okay. This whitish light that we see, it is not something that is scientifically precise. It's not something that we can calculate via an equation. Now, Can we calculate any prayer timing with a very specific astronomical calculation? Yes, we can. We can calculate the end time of Fajr to a millisecond. We can calculate the beginning time of Maghrib to a millisecond. We can calculate the time of Dhuhr, essentially, to a half a minute or so. Why? Because the end time of Fajr is when the sun begins to rise. The disk of the sun is just beginning to rise from a flat horizon. We can calculate with very precise calculations. We have enough knowledge now of astronomy to know the precise second that the disk of the sun would be visible from a flat horizon, not from a mountainous, not from a skyscraper, from a flat horizon. We can calculate. So that is the end timing of Fajr. We can also calculate when the disk of the sun is going to disappear under a flat horizon. Imagine yourself in the ocean. That's the classic example. If you're in the middle of the ocean and you see the sun come up or you see the sun go down, we can very easily, astronomers can calculate to a second, really, those two calculations, beginning of Maghrib and end of Fajr. As for beginning of Fajr and as for Salatul Isha, that is a gray area, pun intended. It is gray. It's a gray area. And it is not a scientifically precise calculation. And there is no formula that anybody can use to predict this. What has happened in the last 30, 40, 50 years even more than, but especially in the last 30 years, is that astronomers, Muslim astronomers, have attempted to try to model equations and try to figure out when we can begin Fajr and when we can begin Isha based upon, so imagine the horizon is flat. The sun is going to do you get the point. The sun is doing a 360 metaphorically. It is the earth that is rotating, but you get the point. The sun is below the horizon on one side for Fajr, and then below the horizon on the other side for Isha. So the question arises, at what angle does the sun have to be beneath the horizon for Fajr as-Sadiq to set in? So again, imagine 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees, you get the point. It's going slowly this way. Obviously 90 degrees is too much. At what angle will the sun be beneath the horizon for Fajr to come in? So for the last 40, 50 years, people have been attempting to be precise. By the way, you do find some medieval Muslim astronomers attempting to talk about this, and they have some figures. But in the recent times, obviously, our knowledge of astronomy has grown exponentially. And so for the last 30, 40 years, you've had a number of great conferences, ulama, committees, and we've had numbers anywhere from 13, 14, all the way up until 19 and a half, even 20, I heard in one paper that I read. So you have from 20 degrees, so 20 degrees would be the earliest, all the way up until even 12, 13 degrees, which would be the closest, right? So obviously the higher the number, the higher the degree, so the more time for the sun to rise up. And the majority of councils of the world, they have a number around 17 or 18. Some say 17 and a half, some say 18, some say I've even had 16, and the Fiqh Council has said 15. And in the last 20 years in particular, quite a lot of specialists have attempted to themselves go to the desert on a daily basis. I know a group that went in California in the 80s. I know of another group in England, 2 years or I think a year or so, a group of ulama went every single day, every 2-3 days, and they wrote down the timings for Fajr. And what all of these people discovered, every one of them that actually did it for multiple days throughout a long period of time, what they discovered is something that is, I would now say, an incontrovertible fact. It cannot be disputed, and that is that there is no one magic number. There is no one number that you can apply across the entire globe. Rather, the equation or the degree that the sun has to be below the horizon, it varies from time of the season to place in the world, to even the weather conditions, because a cloudy, not cloudy, excuse me, I didn't mean cloudy. There's something called the visibility of the horizon. So there's something called atmospheric dust. How clear the horizon is, not cloudy. So there's just the horizon being clear is different than the horizon being cloudy. Not cloudy, I keep on saying cloudy, dusty is a better word. So there's something called, as I said, the visibility factor within regular air. It changes from city to city. So for example, in the ocean, for example, generally speaking, the visibility is much better than in let's say Los Angeles or China or something. The visibility will be different because of the smog. You get that point there. So the notion, therefore, of there being an exact number is false. There is no exact number. And that is why one finds these differences in the charts. That to try to plug in an equation, well then what degree are you going to use? And most of the councils that are now looking into this, they're also advising that we don't have one particular number, even though, like I said, many of them, they gravitate towards around 17 to 18 degrees, and some of them gravitate to 15 degrees. And inshallah ta'ala, the difference is, for most of us, is like 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. In Scandinavia and other countries, obviously that difference is very much. But for most of the world, it's just a few minutes, 5, 10 minutes difference. So again, I would say follow your masjid. It's not a big deal. Your masjid, the people in charge of it, they are taking one of these opinions. And inshallah, whichever position they take, inshallah ta'ala, there should be no haraj or blame. The people in charge of your community, they should do the research about which council or which fatwa they want to follow. And it also depends on which region of the world they live in, because those that live closer to the equator are different than those that live further north and south. So there's differences between that. So every community should look at its own locality and its own ulama and get the number from them, and then they can plug and chug and calculate these charts that come out, and inshallah ta'ala you may follow these charts, and you are not la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. You are not obliged to go out yourself, and you cannot in this city anyway. You wouldn't see anything anyway, and you can follow your locality because they're going with a standard position, and whatever it is, inshallah ta'ala, it is permissible. It's not a big deal either way, whether it's 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever it is. The matter is very trivial, inshallah ta'ala, and it's not up to you. You don't have to worry about this. You may follow whichever one. That having been said, if you want to be extra safe and you follow the more conservative, there's no question that it is a sign of caution, and it's best to do that. The third question that we have today, sister says that she is pregnant, and she is wondering if she does not fast, what must she do? And I'm going to add here that what if a mother is feeding her child and she feels that she cannot fast? So this is the standard question that every Ramadan we get asked. Every single mufti gets asked this question about the issue of pregnant ladies or breastfeeding ladies. If they are not fasting, what should be done? Realize first and foremost that the notion that a lady who's pregnant or a lady who's feeding her child is automatically exempt, that is not totally true. Rather, we ask every individual lady that she needs to see herself whether she's able to fast or not. It's not an automatic excuse. And I have spoken to a lot of doctors, and this is something that is well known, but you ask your own doctor in this regard. But generally speaking, especially in the first 2 trimesters, it would be possible to fast in most countries when it's like 13, 14 hours without any harm to most ladies and most cases. But again, I'm not the doctor. Go to your doctors and get a specific answer. Generally speaking, and especially when it comes to feeding as well, that it is possible to work your way around this. My point in saying this is that a lot of people think that if they are pregnant, then khalas, it's an automatic exemption. No, if you look at the books of fiqh without any exaggeration, all of them state, if such a lady feels that it is a hardship, if they feel that they're not able to, if they're worried about the child, there's always that conditional. You don't find that when it comes to a person who has a high fever. No, a person in a high fever, you don't want him to fast. He's going to not fast because of the fever. Sick people that are very sick, they're not going to fast, no question about that. But ladies that are pregnant, ladies that are feeding their child, they need to see, are they able to fast or not? And what I suggest, if you're healthy and everything is normal and your doctor gives you the okay, that you give it a try. And if on a particular day you feel extra nauseous or something happens that you feel very weak, okay, that day you break and then try again. Don't just give up from day one. Why? Because it will then pile up. I have had cases, and we all know of these cases, where 1 year she's pregnant, then the next year she's feeding the child, and the third year she gets pregnant again. So she might have 4 or 5 or 6 years all to make up. And then she comes and says, what should I do? I have 6 years, to make up. So before you just jump to this issue of not fasting, first see, am I able to fast with some difficulty, or not? If I cannot fast, then khalas, no problem. And if your doctor says it's dangerous, no problem. Now, suppose that it is a problem to fast. Well, this issue of the lady who is pregnant or the lady who is feeding, what should she do? This is a controversy, interesting point of fiqh here. It was a controversy from the time of the Sahaba. The famous scholar Al-Jassas, he has a book called Ahkam al-Quran, and he says that the early scholars differed about this issue in 3 opinions. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the son-in-law of the Prophet, he said that if the pregnant lady or the best breastfeeding lady breaks the fast because of that, then she must make it up afterwards, and there is no financial penalty, no fidya upon her. And Ibn Abbas, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, also said that she must give a financial fidya penalty, a feeding of 1 person per day, and she does not have to make it up. And Ibn Umar said she must give the fidya and she must make it up. Double whammy, double penalty, right? So Ali radiallahu anhu said she has to make it up. Ibn Abbas said she pays the money. Ibn Umar said she has to make it up and pay the money. This is what happens in early Islam. Now, in the next generation and then in the third generation, those 3 opinions essentially moved down to 2. And Ibn Abbas's position was not practiced by any of the major madhabs. And the 4 madhabs vacillated between Ali's opinion, which is that she makes it up, and Ibn Umar's opinion, which is that she makes it up and she gives a penalty. And so the issue of just giving the penalty was essentially abandoned by pretty much all the ummah, and that is because, as I'll explain, it does not make any sense from a technical standpoint. And the Hanafis said that the pregnant lady and the breastfeeding lady, if she feels she cannot fast, then she does not fast, and she makes up those days as soon as she can after Ramadan. The Maliki said the pregnant lady, she makes it up, and the breastfeeding lady, she makes it up and she feeds for every single day. The Shafi'is and Hanbalis, they said that if she fears for herself and she fears for her health, then she makes it up afterwards. However, if she fears for her child's safety as well, if she's worried about her child, then she makes it up and she feeds a poor person. In other words, all of those opinions, all of them, they said she makes it up. None of the famous madahib said that she only pays a financial penalty. Why? Ibn Qudama, the famous Hanbali jurist, he says in his Al-Mughni that the reason for this is that the pregnant lady and the breastfeeding lady, that she will make up the fast, and I don't know of any difference of opinion amongst the people of knowledge for this. Ibn Qudama is saying he does not know of any ikhtilaf amongst the ulama. There is ikhtilaf amongst the Sahaba. The first generation there was an opinion. By the time Ibn Qudama comes in the 6th century, the 7th century, he says, I don't know of any scholar who says she only gives the money. And then he gives you the reason why. لِأَنَّهُمَا بِمَنْزِلَةِ الْمَرِيضِ الْخَائِفُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. Because the status of the pregnant lady and the status of the breastfeeding lady is the status of the sick person who's worried for himself and he cannot fast because he's sick. Then he is cured, and so he has to make it up. So the point is that if you look at the 2 scenarios when you don't fast in the Sharia, number 1, when you're sick, number 2, when you're very elderly. When do you give the financial penalty? You give the financial penalty when you are too elderly to make it up yourself. So, an 80-year-old man, I'm just giving an example, any elderly person who knows that from now on I'm not going to be able to fast. So for example, a diabetic, even if he's 50 years old and the doctor says you cannot stay away from food for 5 hours or else you're in trouble. Khalas. So he is permanently sick or elderly. These 2 people, the permanently sick and the elderly, without any controversy, as per the Quran, Allah says in the Quran, فَفِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينَ. This is a verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. If you cannot fast, then you give the fidya or the penalty, the food of one day. So, for every day you do not fast, you feed one poor person, around $10. You feed, so for the month of Ramadan, around $300 for America. For different countries, you ask your own ulama. In America, generally speaking, it's $10 or a bit less than $10 per day. That is the fidya. So, you will feed a poor person. You're going to give money to a poor person to get food. Now, as for the one who has a fever, but he's otherwise healthy, as for the one who has a temporary illness that is only for that day or for that year that he is prevented from fasting, then he is going to come back normal. Or the one who is traveling, so it's a temporary issue. That person, by testimony of the Quran, by text of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. They make up what they have not done a later day. So, if a person is in fever, right now, there are some of our brothers and sisters, with the virus, with COVID-19, we ask Allah to cure them, to give them shifa. They have high temperatures, they're feeling fatigued, they're hungry, these people, of course, they're not going to fast. And they will drink as much water as they can, take medicine as much as they can. Now, inshallah, they will get cured. Once they get cured, what should they do in a month? By unanimous consensus, if they miss 3 days, if they miss 5 days, they're going to make up those 3 or 5 days after Ramadan. Okay, that is clear. Now, the pregnant lady, which of these two scenarios is she closer to? Is she closer to the one who's temporarily sick and is going to become normal? Or is she closer to the one who is permanently sick and will never become normal? It's common sense that the one that she's closest to, in terms of which of the two paradigms, is the one who's temporarily sick, because she will regain her energy and strength 100% after that phase is over. And that is why after the time of the Sahaba, there was no controversy, and it is something that is pretty much a unanimous position that the only issue comes that she have a double penalty, and inshallah she doesn't. She just has to make it up without giving the fidya or the financial one. She just makes it up, and inshallah that is good enough. So to conclude this question, the lady who is pregnant or the lady who is breastfeeding, if she feels that she is unable to fast, that she's going to have a great amount of haraj or it's just not possible to fast, and she knows best, and she has to answer to Allah. Nobody can make that decision for her. Obviously her and her doctors, right? That's something that she has to make in consultation with her doctors. She knows best, and people are different. Some people have more strength than others. But I'm saying still, the default, generally speaking, that to abstain from food for 13, 14, 15 hours in most scenarios is not something that is impossible to do. But still, you know your situation best. All of these, I keep on bringing it back that I'm speaking generics, specifics is up to you. Suppose you decide that I cannot fast. Okay, don't fast. And after the pregnancy is over and after you're recovered, after everything is, your energy is back, then insha'Allah ta'ala, you will make up your fast. If it so happens that you're feeding and 2 years go by, well then, you will have to make up two months of Ramadan, and that's just like you got off for 2 months, now you have to make it up for 2 months, bit by bit, slowly but surely. And this is, as Ibn Qudama says, without any controversy amongst the scholars of Islam. Yes, there is a position from the very early of times, and perhaps 1 or 2 people in our times are wanting to follow that, but I don't see this as being within it's not a reasonable position, because as I said, the two paradigms, the pregnant lady is closer to one of them than the other, and in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The next question that we have, sister is saying that she has to go to the doctor and get an injection. Does that break the fast? The issue of whether injections break the fast or not, you can literally give an hour-long lecture with 7 opinions about this issue. We don't have time for all of this, literally at least 7 opinions with all of the details. You can get 7, but we don't have time for all of this. I'm just going to give you the spectrum that is most important. Some say that any injection breaks the fast. Some say that no injection breaks the fast. Some say that an injection in the vein breaks the fast and an injection in the muscle does not break the fast. And frankly, that is the most bizarre and the weakest position, because anything that is in the muscle will also end up in the blood. blood. Every doctor knows this. It's just something that our scholars, sometimes they don't know medicine that well. So it was a common position like 20, 30 years ago that if it's in the vein, it breaks the fast. If it's in the muscle, it doesn't break the fast. But there's no reason for this distinction. Anyway, some ulama said this. The position that I follow, the one that makes the most sense, is the position of my teacher, Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, and also the position of the Majma' Fiqhi, the council of Rabit al-Alam, Majma' al-Fiqhi. And they said, we look at the type of injection, not where it is put, the type of injection. If the injection is meant to increase your energy, then it invalidates the fast. And if the injection is meant for anything else, if it's meant for a pre-surgery, for numbing, for something that is something else, because sometimes, for example, you're getting some type of CAT scan or something, they have to put in a special liquid that's going to go through your system, let's say. Or, for example, you're going to the dentist and you have to get a numbing sensation in your mouth before the dentist does the operation or the surgery or whatever. That type of injection does not break the fast because nothing has happened that would break the fast. However, if the injection is nourishment, straight drop of glucose, for example, a drip of, a regular drip, clearly you are kind of cheating the system here and you're trying to get some energy, so that would break the fast. Otherwise, and so, by the way, if you went to the hospital, you got admitted and they put you on a drip, for whatever reason, a legitimate reason. Okay, fine, no problem. You're in the hospital, something is happening. Just remember, if inshallah you get normal and healthy, then you have to make up that fast. And if it's not something that you're going to get normal and healthy, you're going to pay fidya, the kafara of that day. But the point being that any type of injection that is non-nourishing, and we have many scenarios and examples of this, that is inshallah not going to break the fast. And by the way, when we're on this topic, let me just add here that as well, inshallah ta'ala, it does not break the fast if you put eye drops or ear drops or asthma sprays. If you suffer from severe asthma and you need to just have a spray, an inhaler to inhale it in, this is a fine mist, and it is not the same as drinking water, even though there is a physical difference only, not a chemical difference. Because what is a fine mist? If you take a glass, if you take a mirror and you do your spray a few times, you will get a few drops of water, right? And now if you were to drink that water, we all know it would break your fast. But again, we look at the goal, we look at what is happening here. That fine mist, it is meant as a medicine. It is not meant to be swallowed. It's actually an air particle. If you were in a hot sauna room and you're breathing in the water droplets, the high concentration of water in the atmosphere, that does not break your wudu. But if that same water were to be condensed in a cup and you were to drink it, that would break your, wudu, that would break your fasting. So fasting is not broken by asthma sprays, and this is the fatwa of most of my teachers. Some said it did, but inshallah it does not make any sense because it's not a drinking liquid. It's a liquid that is a mist, that liquid that is in the air. And fasting is also not broken by medicinal drops. Now, some ulama were strict and they said if you put it in the eye and it goes into the throat and then you swallow it. So, if you can get out of it and don't do it when you're fasting, it's better. But inshallah ta'ala, if you need to take medication, that is not going to be swallowed, because swallowing down your throat will break the fast. Anything that's swallowed down the throat will break the fast. So if you take medication via the eyes or via the ears or something of that nature that you're not swallowing, or there's a necessary medication that you have to inject that is not going to increase your energy, then inshallah ta'ala that does not invalidate the fast according to the Majma' al-Fiqhi and also according to many ulama, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The next question that we have here is that once I broke my fast accidentally before its time, do I have to make it up, or was the fast valid? So what is to be done if one mistakenly breaks the fast before its time? What do you mean by mistakenly breaks the fast? What do you mean by I mistakenly broke the fast? Do you mean that you ate accidentally, that you passed by water and you forgot you were fasting and you simply took a swig of the water and that's it? Or do you mean that you broke before Maghrib time thinking that it was Maghrib time? If you drank accidentally, not realizing you were fasting, so it's human nature. For example, when we used to work in the offices, right? Nowadays we're all working from home, but when we were working in the offices, we passed by the water machine, okay? And so subconsciously you're like, oh, let me just drink some water. and then you drink it, you're like, oh, I'm fasting. So it already went down your throat. If you accidentally drink, so very clearly from the hadith, it is very explicit. Our Prophet ﷺ said, "Man nasiya wa huwa sa'imun fa akala aw shariba falyatumma sawmahu fa innama at'amahu Allah wa saqa." Whoever forgot that he was fasting and he ate or drank out of forgetfulness, then let him continue his fast, because it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave him food, and it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who gave him drink. So essentially, if you completely accidentally forget and you eat or drink, then no problem. It is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, this reminds me of a funny incident in my own life. Let me just quickly tell you this, then move on. My eldest son Ammar, so when he was young, he was only like I think 10 or 11 years old. And it was really a hilarious thing that I still remember to this day. That one day I saw him drinking. In Ramadan. I said, "You're drinking, it's Ramadan." He goes, "Oh, I forgot, sorry." So he just left it there. And then after a few hours, I saw him again past the kitchen, and he was drinking again. I said, "It's this." He says, "You're drinking again." So he shrugged his shoulders, looked at me, he goes, "Is it my fault if Allah gifted me twice?" So it's like, mashallah, the kids have some smart responses like this. So subhanallah, no, it's not your fault if Allah gifts you twice, but you also have to pay attention that you are actually eating or not eating or drinking. By the way, if you see somebody eating or drinking that's a Muslim, and you know they're supposed to be fasting, you may remind them, hey, it's Ramadan, no problem. You may remind them. They are forgiven, but you overall, you should remind them, hey, isn't it Ramadan? No problem with that. So the issue comes now that the brother said, or the sister said, I don't know, it was a gender, the mistakenly breaking my fast before its time. If you broke it accidentally, not intending to break it, that's what I mean. If you ate or drank without intending that you want to break your fast, then you are 100% forgiven and you continue, and it is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if you intended to break your fast and you found out it was a mistake, that is where the issue comes. So, classic example, suppose Maghrib is at 8 p.m., okay? And let's just suppose that you have a watch that is 5 minutes early in your room. You didn't know it's 5 minutes early. The watch hits 8 p.m., and you're like, oh, okay, it's time to break. You're eating, drinking. Somebody walks in, your wife or your child is like, no, it's not time yet. You say it's 8 o'clock. No, but that watch is 5 minutes advanced, right? Or suppose in your mind, Maghrib was 7:58. And you forgot that was 2 days ago, and today's timing you didn't look it up, and today's timing is moved on to 8 o'clock, right? So 7:58, you're counting down the milliseconds. As soon as it's 7:58, then somebody checks and goes, no, that was yesterday. Today is 8 o'clock, right? So 2-3 minutes difference. I mean, if it's 30 seconds between watches, we're not, Allah knows, but we're talking about something that is, that it is clearly too early. So if you wanted to break your fast, but you mistakenly broke it at the wrong timing, i.e., you thought that it was Maghrib, but it was not Maghrib, then realize that the safest position and the position of all four schools of law is that you are not sinful, but you need to make it up after Ramadan. You're not sinful because you didn't intentionally try to break the fast. Obviously, if you intentionally break the fast, that is a major sin. So the opinion of all four madhabs, and it is definitely the safest one to follow, is that even if you are off by a minute or two and you thought that it was Maghrib, but it was not Maghrib, and you ate, you broke the fast, then your fast is invalid and you need to make it up. Now realize that there is a strong dissenting voice in this particular issue, and many of the early scholars, some of the Sahaba, the Tabi'un, the great scholar of Hadith Ibn Khuzaymah, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, very strongly argued, my own teacher Ibn Uthaymeen as well, they argued that if it was a genuine mistake, then they are forgiven and the fast is also valid. That was their perspective. And they said that Allah says so in the Quran, that لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. Oh Allah, don't call us to account if we make a mistake or make a genuine forgetfulness, then oh Allah, forgive us. And it is reported in Sahih Bukhari that Asma bint Abi Bakr radiallahu anha said that once we broke our iftar in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on a cloudy day, and after we had broken our iftar, then the sun rose up. And she did not say whether they made it up or not. And the fact that she did not say indicates that they didn't make it up, or else she would have said. That is the interpretation of Ibn Taymiyyah, I'm saying. And also we have the narration of Umar ibn Khattab in the Sunan of al-Bayhaqi, that once Umar ibn Khattab was sitting in the masjid and it was cloudy and they broke their fast, and then when the clouds disappeared he was told, oh, the sun is still there, so we have to make it up. And so Umar ibn Khattab said, La wallahi la naqdihi, no, we are not going to make this up. Ma tajanafna li ithmin, we did not intend to commit a sin. So this narration is also used by the other dissenting voice. Nonetheless, that having been said, and I'm kind of seem to be defending that position, but I'm just letting you know this is a minority opinion, and to follow the majority is safer. It's just one day. It's just best to make it up and get out of this controversy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The final question for today, inshallah ta'ala. Given that the masjids are locked down, can we do i'tikaf in our houses? Can we do i'tikaf in our houses? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 187, وَلَا تُبَاشِرُهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. Do not come close to your women when you are doing i'tikaf in the masajid. And our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam always did i'tikaf in his masjid. And that is why all of the schools of Islamic law have said that i'tikaf for the men must be done in the masjid. The concept of i'tikaf means you seclude yourself, and you really cannot seclude yourself. I'takafa means to basically seclude, to cut away from. So the concept of i'tikaf is that you break away from society, from family, from your daily routine, and you seclude yourself to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as max as you can during those times, and you only exit that seclusion for the very bare necessities. If you have to go to the restroom, then you have to go outside the masjid. If there is no food coming to you, you will go and get food. If you have to do ghusl and it's not inside. Otherwise, as much as you can, you remain in the masjid. Now, there are some very, very small dissenting voices on the far right and the far left. Some ulama said that i'tikaf can only be done in Makkah, Medina, and Jerusalem, the haram of the two Makkahs and the Masjid al-Aqsa. But this is an abandoned opinion. Nobody actually follows it except a very small group of literalists, and perhaps one scholar in the entire ummah, as far as I know, Ibn Lubaba al-Maliki. He said that i'tikaf can be done anywhere that you want, but these are positions that are very, you can find them mentioned in the encyclopedias, but in reality, nobody ever acted upon this in Islamic history. And therefore, given that the masajid are shut down, and given that i'tikaf is not obligatory, then there is no need to reinvent in this regard, because there's no, you can always get out of this in a simple way, and that is by secluding yourself for whatever period of time for the worship of Allah. And it's not a technical i'tikaf, but it is a seclusion, and you expect Allah to reward you. Logistically, you can tell your family, you can shut off your cell phone, and you can say, from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., please nobody disturb me, I want to read Quran. This is a type of, it's not a technical i'tikaf, but it is a seclusion. And you can expect Allah to reward you that you are doing this for the sake of Allah, that you are sitting in a corner reading your Quran, doing your ibadah, doing your dhikr. There is no problem in doing that. So given the fact that i'tikaf is not obligatory, and given the fact that you can worship Allah in a type of seclusion in your house, there is no need to radically reinvent this position. And the standard position of all of the scholars of Islam for all of Islamic history is that i'tikaf is linked to the masajid. Now, footnote here, many of you are aware that the Hanafi school, and only the Hanafi school, it allowed i'tikaf for women and only women if a number of conditions were met, and of them is that they have a private space in their own house that they regularly worship in, i.e. they have a room or a corner that is known to be their regular masjid corner. That's the Hanafi position. The other three madhabs actually say no. The concept of i'tikaf is linked to the masajid. Even the wives of our Prophet ﷺ, when they would do i'tikaf, they would do it in the masjid, despite the fact that their houses were connected to the masjid. And this is actually one of the strongest evidences that the majority have, and it's a very strong evidence, that i'tikaf is linked to a masjid. Because if anybody should not do i'tikaf in the masjid, it should be the women, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. Yet the hadith is in Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim that Salama and Aisha and others, they would do i'tikaf and they would set up a small portion of the masjid and they would put their tent over there and they would sleep over there and they would worship Allah over there, despite the fact that their houses are literally connected to the masjid. But they would not do i'tikaf over there, they would do it inside the masjid. Anyway, that is the position of the majority. Whoever is a Hanafi wants to follow their school, there's no problem. Having said this, I want to also point out, dear Muslims, the religion is so beautiful. Whoever sincerely had the intention to do i'tikaf this year, guess what? Allah gave you all the blessings and reward with zero effort. Because إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You had the intention, you got it. Alhamdulillah. What more do you want? You wanted to do it, you were sincere for doing it, Alhamdulillah, you got it. So if you were sincerely wanting to do i'tikaf and it was your goal to do i'tikaf, then this year Allah gifted you that while you're at home, you will get the rewards of i'tikaf. And for those of you who want to try to do i'tikaf, well, you're not going to do something technically called an i'tikaf, but why not dedicate a day, half a day, a portion of the night, and tell your family and shut your cell phone off and tell them, look, I just want to worship, just don't disturb me. And consider that your equivalent, and Allah will bless you for that niyyah and for that attempt, even if it does not technically constitute an i'tikaf. Nobody's going to say that what you're doing is wrong. Wallahi, what you're doing is good if you break away from everything, just like the process of when he went to Ghar Hira. Just break away from everything and just worship Allah privately without any interruption, and consider that the equivalent of the i'tikaf. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us to see a regular Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us throughout this month. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our loved ones and our families. We ask Allah to accept our good deeds, to exalt our ranks, to forgive our sins. And final point, as you're probably aware, that I've advertised this as well, that inshallah ta'ala in this month of Ramadan, my goal will be that every single day at 10 p.m., we're going to start from Thursday, day after tomorrow, every single day at 10 p.m., we will be doing some recitation with Hafiz Sajjad, and then we're going to be doing a summary, not a tafsir, a summary of that entire juz, so that inshallah then you can read the juz after I finish that summary. It will prepare you for that summary. It's a type of cliff notes, if you like. It's a type of summary of what we're going to be doing, so that inshallah ta'ala then you can read that portion and better benefit from it. So I hope that inshallah ta'ala we will follow daily, regularly, so that inshallah you can read it on a daily basis. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما إن الذين يؤذون الله ورسوله لعنهم الله في الدنيا والآخرة وأعد لهم عذابا مهينا والذين يؤذون المؤمنين والمؤمنات بغير ما اكتسبوا فقد احتملوا بهتانا وإثما مبينا